Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about some of the best free online resources for our audience members who are interested in investing in individual stocks. One thing that you may not know about working on Wall Street is we actually use an online platform called the Bloomberg Terminal. That's where we access most of the financial information and data. The thing about the Bloomberg Terminal is it costs over $10,000 per year per person. So if you've heard of Michael Bloomberg, who was the mayor of New York and who ran for president at one point, he made all his money from selling these Bloomberg Terminal accesses. So I'm not going to recommend any platforms or websites that cost $1,000. Instead, I'm going to recommend 5 websites that are all free. Here's the first free website that I'd recommend people check out. It's called EdmundSEC.com. And here you can basically search for any company. So let's take NVIDIA, for example. And we can actually access their 10Qs and 10Ks, as well as some of their other documents on this website. The cool thing about this is normally you can already access a lot of this information on the SEC's website itself, but here you can actually search. So say, for example, 10Qs are for quarterly earnings, 10Ks are annual earnings. So let's say we want to look at NVIDIA's 2024 annual report, and we want to search within the document. You can search for any type of information in here. Let's say we want to check out any mentions of AI. Of course, this is going to return lots of results, but here you can actually click through and see every mention of AI within the 10K, the annual report. So this just dramatically speeds up your search through documents. You can also search, for example, maybe we want to find mentions of stock-based compensation. And here you can again see all the different areas where stock-based comp is mentioned within the document. It really speeds up the process of going through some of the financial filings. The second site I recommend people check out is valueinvestorsclub.com. And what you can do here is you can make yourself an account, and even on a free account where you're not submitting ideas, you can actually still see ideas that are up to 45 days old. Even on old ideas, you can see through a lot of the ways that people think through whether a stock is an interesting buy or not. So let's just stick with NVIDIA for a moment. You can see here that there's a bunch of historic NVIDIA pitches that have been given. There's some that are denoted with the S, which is a short pitch, and some that are not, which means it's a long pitch. And there are some pretty good pitches. You can kind of see how different investors think about valuing the business. And there's a bunch of information here that people have previously looked at before. And the reason I know that this website is actually pretty legitimate is a lot of hedge funds actually are active participants on VIC, Value Investors Club. So they will actually type up their write-ups and put it on this website. And again, do your own research. Not all of the ideas are necessarily good, but it is interesting to look at long pitches, short pitches on stocks that maybe you're interested in. A third resource that I think is interesting is previous activist presentations. And the reason why this is interesting, it's this website 10xebitda.com. It has all these historic activist pitches. And as a reminder, what an activist fund does is they will actually write up a detailed analysis of a stock and then pitch shareholders on potentially implementing changes at a company. And because they have to convince shareholders like ourselves into voting for some of the suggestions that they want to implement and voting for board members that they suggest, they'll write up long and detailed write-ups about why they think a specific stock is interesting and why they think doing certain corporate changes or initiatives are interesting. For example, let's look at McDonald's. Here you can see a 65 slide deck about how this fund is pitching changes to be made at McDonald's. And typically, they'll also write up a detailed analysis of why they find the stock interesting as well. So there's a bunch of information here. They have other presentations. Let's look at, for example, Starbucks. This one's by Pershing Square, which is Bill Ackman's hedge fund. It's a bunch of information, 43 slides, where they talk about why Starbucks is interesting, what type of changes they want to implement at the company. It's a lot of interesting information and analysis on why you might want to own a stock, how an investor thinks about a stock, and how an investor might think about improving a company. The fourth resource I'd recommend is investor letters. So similar to the activist presentations, a lot of investors also publish their quarterly letters. And these are the letters that they send to people who are invested in their fund. Here's, for example, Third Point Capital is a particular hedge fund which specializes in both investing in stocks as well as investing in credit. And their investor letter, which they send to people invested in their fund, is also publicly released on Reddit. So you can actually click into here and you can see their top 5 investments, Meta, Vistra, Amazon. You can look at some of their thoughts. Sometimes they'll list specific stocks that they think are interesting and actually write out an entire write-up of why they think that stock is interesting. So in this case, for example, they're talking about Vistra, which is a utility company in Texas. And they have a pretty detailed write-up about some of the history of the company and why they might think the stock is either a long or a short. Again, you don't always want to just take someone's word for it, even if they're a well-known investor, but it is really interesting to look at other people's thoughts, especially because these guys usually have one person who's spending a lot of time just focused on this industry or just focused on the stock. So this is a great resource if you want to also learn about how different investors are potentially thinking about stocks you're interested in. And you can see here, it also lists the tickers of different stocks in case you're also invested in those stocks and want to click into those investor letters. The final resource I'd suggest you check out is Glassdoor. So you probably have heard of Glassdoor before. It has a bunch of reviews by employees of their employers, aka the companies they work for. And one, this is interesting if you're considering switching jobs to a certain company. You want to probably search up that company on Glassdoor. But it's also interesting from an investment standpoint because oftentimes when a company starts to go downhill, you start to see a lot of posts about it on Glassdoor, and you can actually see it before it shows up in the financial results. Employees are unhappy. They're posting about managers they're unhappy with, or they're posting about strategies they're unhappy with. Sometimes they'll start posting about layoffs. So you can see here as well, there's a bunch of different companies here, but let's say, for example, we want to search up a company. Let's just stick with NVIDIA. You can see here it's rated quite highly, so probably not a red flag here. but you can check out the different reviews. You can get very detailed here to try to get information on a company. So this is a very high approval rating of a CEO. You want to look for more red flags from Glassdoor. So if people are unhappy with the company, unhappy with the CEO, that might be a concern. Or you can look at the trend over time as well. That can tell you some information. So it's a great resource to find some information on a company before necessarily the market realizes. Okay, great. So those are 5 resources where you can find a bunch of different information about stock investments. And these are completely free on the internet and available for you to use. You don't have to have some $10,000 per year plus subscription to actually have access. Of course, the best investments, if you're investing in individual stocks, are often in industries you know well and companies you know well. So you might know specific resources for that industry where you can find a bunch of information. We're going to talk more about individual stocks in some of the upcoming sessions, because even though a lot of the times the move is to invest in ETFs, I know there's a bunch of interest in individual stock investing as well. And we want to share some of the information just from our experience investing in individual stocks within the context of a larger portfolio. Thanks for listening in. I'm Nick, and I've worked in finance for almost a decade. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and follow our channel for future videos. You can check out our WeChat group for more wealth and retirement tips. Talk to you next time. Bye.